The following program is a Boris Productions presentation. Local Lens is a CPTV documentary series made possible by funding from the Connecticut Commission on Culture and Tourism. Funding for this episode on Watch, Connecticut's emergency service volunteers, is provided by our partners, the State of Connecticut Department of Emergency Management and Homeland Security, Citizen Corps, the Commission on Fire Prevention and Control, the Connecticut Department of Public Health, and the Public Health Foundation of Connecticut. Additional support comes from the Torrington Medical Reserve Corps and MyTV9.
What's the address of your emergency?
I called to report an injury up on Case Mountain in Manchester. I just got a call from my friend who's up there. He's been mountain biking. I guess he fell or he can't walk.
911.
There's a fire at 100 Crescent City Road, Ballintown, Connecticut. There's smoke coming out of the full roof of the house.
Run out, okay?
Yep.
We'll get him there.
Okay, please hurry.
A little boy screaming. I saw him go underwater. His brother is screaming. No, I can't get to you. I don't know what's going on.
Cars started getting twisted around and flipped over, and dirt flying everywhere, cars flying everywhere, debris flying everywhere.
2 West Ledge Drive. What's going on? There's a fire, and it's going up pretty good. Where? At the Petrie Apartments, and it's burning really bad.
You report the structure fire.
There's a fire. It's a West Drive.
Get everybody evacuated. Get away.
Okay, come on.
In the last 25 years, the number of emergency calls have doubled in the United States. Some, such as for Katrina and September 11th, required the need for a massive response. Most calls, however, are local calls from citizens. What if you called for urgent help and no one came? The reality that you may be left bleeding on the side of the road, or putting out your own fire, or hopelessly lost may one day be a distinct possibility. Nearly 70% of the country geographically and 40% of its population are served by emergency volunteers. In approximately 70% of Connecticut's communities, volunteers are the first line of defense. But between 1984 and 2006, the number of those volunteers nationally has declined by 8%. The numbers are especially drastic when it comes to volunteer firefighters, who make up the bulk of the state's first responders. These may just be numbers. To others, maybe you, they may mean the difference between life and death. Historically, our desire to be there for our neighbor is well documented. Actually, that need to help reflects the very essence of who we are.
I think it's part of human nature, but part of the community itself. From even during medieval times, the police departments, they didn't have police departments. It was, okay, we're a community and we have this need. And people step forward. Okay, it's Monday night, so it's your turn to go out and guard this town. And it's Tuesday night, my household provides somebody to go out and guard the town.
Our nation was based in systems that were created by volunteers. From our Minutemen all the way to what used to be the fire departments. And now the emergency and medical service, the providers that we have, is based really in the love for our country. Then September 11 came and changed the entire world. And I think that since then we have acts of terrorism, bioterrorism, natural disaster, man-made disasters. And now we realize that we cannot wait for the official state response or county response or local response or federal response. I think we have to have a community that is ready to serve.
Out of 320 some fire departments, there are only about 32 that actually have some career personnel. So we really depend heavily on the faith and trust of the public to come and help us with the volunteer side of the house.
When emergencies happen, people have to pitch in because we are a community.
Today, communities are attempting to resuscitate the rescue system, which at one time or another touched us all. It's not simply sentimentality on our part, it's also an act of desperation.
The volunteers save the town and the taxpayers major amounts of money.
If we just had to staff one piece of apparatus with a crew of 4, which is the minimal crew, 24/7, that would cost $750,000 to $1 million every year that the community would have to pay.
If we don't have the volunteers, a lot of the functions that we do supply to the town could not happen.
When there's something bad is happening in Manchester, my people are out in the streets. The police department are out in the streets. There's a lot of support activity that has to be accomplished, and this is the gap that these volunteers fill.
As soon as the volunteer driver program became up and running and really was a solvent program, we more than doubled our volume.
We have thousands of visitors that come in and out of this channel every weekend, and volunteers in town have always maintained protection of them. Felt it was important to help everyone out.
By land or by sea, first response volunteers have answered the call. Whether it was a father and son gasping for air in a rural lake,
I took off my boots and went in the water with them.
An injured mountain biker in a dense forest in desperate need of medical attention.
There were storms coming in that day, and we were racing against time.
A ravaging fire ripping through an apartment complex, endangering the lives of its occupants.
Then I heard like a whoosh of wind, so I said, well, I thought it was raining, so I got up and opened the door. It was nothing but fire.
Or a clear day suddenly darkened by the tragedy of a major accident, which spread fire, smoke, death, and debris over a Connecticut roadway.
Oh, I have a very good recollection. Everything is imprinted in my memory, what exactly happened. It was a regular morning, beautiful morning, sunny day.
I was just on my way to work. Typical Friday morning, beautiful sunny day, about 7:50 in the morning. Travel on Route 44 like I do every day.
I was in the left center lane at the light. Truck number 8 from American Crushing and Recycling had lost its brakes and clutch and transmission apparently higher up on the mountain, so it came flying down the mountain.
And then I spotted the truck coming towards us.
The operator tried to make it through the intersection, was unable.
Lost its control and hit the vehicle in front of him, and then the truck tipped over and spilled its content on the road. There was lots of big rocks, cement, sand, all the debris.
And it all just kind of unfolded right in front of me. I was lucky enough, I basically locked up my brakes and kind of skidded to the right. Got my truck over to the side of the road. Some cars started getting twisted around and flipped over, and there was just dirt flying everywhere, cars flying everywhere, debris flying everywhere.
He continued to plowing through the intersection, and it was like a domino effect.
And hit 18 cars and a commuter bus with, I think there was 17 people on the bus.
And the big gray wall of dust and something were coming towards me, and then everything went black.
Then the truck caught fire, just kind of exploded right in front of me, and it was just instant chaos. I had my portable radio for my police job on the seat next to me. I grabbed that and jumped out of the car and just started running towards the accident, basically screaming for help into the radio, just trying to get people coming, because I knew it was pretty bad. It was pretty enormous scene. The first car I got to was this small blue car, and tried to, there was a woman in it, unconscious. Tried to get the door open, the driver's door. I couldn't get it open. It was just smashed shut.
The fuel tank was ruptured, and the cottage park and already set on fire.
And there was just 4 or 5 inches of dirt on the road at that point. I just started picking up dirt and throwing it on the fire of the gas tank, trying to keep that down, just screaming for people to help me.
I thought I was dreaming, and it was a very bad, unpleasant dream. I almost felt nauseous.
There was another gentleman on the other side of the car who had tried to do the same thing I did. I was able to throw my knife to him. He cut the seatbelt.
And then I thought I saw an angel in my car. So what is an angel doing here?
And I dragged her out through the passenger window. She was just, unconscious. It was just a bloody mess.
Somebody in white was in my car calling me and asking me to follow him. While he was taking me out of the vehicle, he burned his arm because as he was pulling me out of the car, the flames were already in the back seat. So it was just the moments from the moment where the car got inflamed.
We dragged her to the side of the road and turned her off to some guy who said he was a doctor, and that was good enough for me at that point. And then we just went back to pulling people out of cars and trying to get people off the bus, and it was just incredibly chaotic scene.
After that, I woke up on the grass.
If I had left her to go further on, she certainly wouldn't have made it. But I was glad I was able to get her out and get some of the other people out too. Give them a chance.
I wasn't even sure if I'm gonna live after that. I thought I'm definitely going into coma now, and I may not wake up again.
It was something out of a movie. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was a very large-scale operation that started at 7:30 in the morning, didn't end until 10 o'clock at night.
Passers-by and witnesses also volunteered to care for the caregivers.
Some people were there and assisted us with taking care of us, as the incident went on, and making sure that the firefighters and all the first responders were being fed and hydrated and those types of things. A nearby restaurant provided food for the incident. They didn't have to do those types of things. They chose to do those types of things. So there's a lot of those stories.
Stories so compelling that accident victim Mark Robinson has decided to write a book about the event called Smoke, Fire, and Angels.
It was a tremendous outpouring of concern for people's fellow man. It is just an enormously incredible story of what people did that day. Close to 300 people descended on the scene. They came from everywhere. They came from nearby businesses, passers-by, obviously the local police and firemen, Lifestar from above, east, west, north, south. People came from every direction to help us that day, and thank God for that. When that truck hit, it spread this trail of destruction for almost 200 yards, and there were up to a dozen of us who were really truly involved in life and death struggles in the immediate aftermath of that crash. So there were some people in desperate need of immediate help, and people got to us very quickly.
The very nature of volunteer emergency service requires immediate response and personal sacrifice.
You've started the day before the light comes up in the winter. It's snowing. You drive to work. You work a full day, usually put in an extra whatever time it takes to get your job done. You go home. There's still everything at home that needs to be done. The dinner has to be cooked, and all the routines that you need to do at home. Snowstorm turns into a blizzard. You finally take a hot bath. You put your pajamas on. All you're thinking about is your head hitting that pillow, and the phone rings, and it's a 9-year-old boy who went out to look for his dog in a snowstorm. The dog's come home, and the boy hasn't. At that point, the adrenaline kicks in. And you have the skills, all the training, all of the hours that you spent to develop the skills that could be used in the time of an emergency come into play now. And so you get your gear, throw the gear in the car, put on your uniform, call the dog, and you spend an hour or 2 hours fighting the snowstorm to get there, and get there at midnight to begin the search. And then your day begins.
Her 9-to-5 gig is typical of a telecommunications engineer at Travelers Insurance, minus the pocket protector. The mild-mannered employee, however, lives a double life. At any moment, Marion Beeland could be asked to drop everything to find a lost boy or a confused senior citizen in the forest. Marion would draft Tracer, her trained rescue dog, to lead the way.
And when we arrive at the search, there's a whole group of people that has turned out with their special skills. I'm the dog handler. We go into the field. The EMT is there. The person that knows how to navigate is there. The communication specialist is there. They have CERT people organizing, holding together, creating a place so that we could park, directing traffic. All those people came out of their nice warm homes, their nice warm beds, to be able to make the mission successful, bringing to the table what they have.
Ready, set, fire!
Today we were doing a drill where the dog was rewarded for finding someone. The dog has to be able to find a stranger.
Right there? Oh, good boy! Did you find him? All right, I'm coming.
It is not unusual for Marion and Tracer to work with another search team.
Who's going to be, you'll be ground, we'll get you.
He's coordinating
Salmon,
ground.
we'll have you as Thames, or you
Okay,
as Thames,
okay.
you as Salmon.
All right.
You'll be ground team 4, right?
Correct. Okay.
All right. All right. Once again, we got the Hartford Airport here.
Yep.
And they're saying it's somewhere over here by the Salmon River.
This team, the Civil Air Patrol, a civilian auxiliary of the U.S. Air Force, may coordinate a search from terra firma, but in no time at all they're airbound, providing a bird's eye view in emergency scenarios, often over Long Island Sound.
Civil Air Patrol is not a job to me. It's almost, it seems to be like it's a way of life for some people. It's a structured environment, great for cadets education, myself. I just enjoy flying. I've had many years of flying, and this is my way to actually give back to society.
On patrol, Lenny Kimball may coordinate below with the Westbrook Volunteer Fire Department Marine Patrol pilot Aidan Mealy to find lost or injured boaters.
I personally, last weekend, we had a call where we were pulling, we assisted a number of people off a vessel that had gone aground on some rocks, precariously with a number of children on board. Out here, if your boat catches on fire or it sinks, you now have a whole other peril. You're in the water, so now you have to survive the water, whether hypothermia, whether it be drifting, whether, just fatigue of keeping yourself afloat. All those things come into factor, and that's why we wanted to provide the service, and we got this vessel to do that.
Once a victim is brought ashore, and if their next destination is Lawrence and Memorial Hospital in New London, then volunteer paramedic unit driver Nancy Wado may be responsible for the transport as well as assisting the paramedic. One recent morning, Nancy and her paramedic partner Marie Waters tended to household accidents, illnesses, and a pair of traffic accidents.
It's a little scary. You want to really be careful because you don't know what the other people are going to do.
Typically, Nancy finds herself at a scene with local firefighters, career and volunteer, depending on the community. While their numbers are dwindling, volunteer firefighters are still the most prolific first responders in the state.
In the volunteer service, we have all kinds of people, and we have all kinds of jobs for them. There are some of them that don't like to climb ladders. We have other work for them. There are some of them don't want to go into a burning building, but they love to drive the truck. We let them drive the truck. There are some of them that, one person, for example, that we have in our department is a photographer, and he is our department photographer. And we love the work that he does. So those are examples, and there are administrative people who keep the department going behind the scenes. We need them all, and when you put them all together, the department goes.
I joined the Ladies Auxiliary, and a lot of people go, big deal, it's another social circle. Ladies Auxiliary do an awful lot of good, and they help to raise funds for their volunteer fire departments generally. But we also served at fires. We were always the ones who had the meals prepared, the coffee prepared, lots of water, lots of cold drink at the scenes. So, people serve in a variety of capacities, and I always love to tell people, take what interests you and build on that.
Volunteer fire companies are often made up of career police and firefighters who want to give back in their hometowns. Medical professionals often give back through medical response teams and the unit known as DMAT.
We can be stood up within 2 to 4 hours to set up something similar to what you see behind me as an initial triage treatment center.
In our team,
opened up one of the first hospitals that was able to receive patients in the city of New Orleans. There are 5 people from our team vaccinated their entire staff and made sure that they are able to go back to work and do what they do.
While DMAT is prepared to respond to major emergencies and evacuations, veterinarian Dr. Arnold Goldman says Hurricane Katrina taught us that we must also be ready to evacuate pets to prevent the human victims from returning to a danger zone to retrieve their 4-legged loved ones and feathered friends.
Hello! Hello! And those people will be told at that time to move with their pets. And when they get where they're going, whatever the host community is, there'll be cages and bowls for pets and cots and whatever else is needed for people. And we will set up an animal shelter anywhere in any weather. Now we have 3 trailers, each 24 feet long, with 750 cages and 1,500 bowls and everything else you can imagine.
The myriad of volunteer specialists, such as mountain bike rescue personnel and ham radio operators, provide our society with services that communities could not possibly afford.
Our mountain bikers know that area like they know the back of their hand. Something I cannot teach my uniform people or drill in my uniform people so that they can be available to do that 24/7. So in that way, the volunteers that comprise the mountain bike rescue team are invaluable to me.
Mountain biking is something I love to do, and it's really my give back both to the sport and the town of Manchester, community service.
The same thing with the ham radio operators. I could run my people through and I could get them licensed as ham radio operators, but by maintaining a cadre of volunteers, I have over 50 ham radio operators.
And the object is to provide communications for the town in case there's an emergency. If the police radios go down and the fire radio go down, we can back them up.
We can set up mobile communications and just about talk to the world without any power. We can send emails and faxes and everything, even without the internet, through ham radio.
Those talents were recently called into action.
2 bikers had gone out early in the morning, 8 to 9 in the morning. Both experienced bikers and both were familiar with the Case Mountain Recreation Area and the trail system. So familiar, as a matter of fact, that they didn't mind going off blazed trails and going into some areas that would otherwise be considered remote or inaccessible. One of the bikers was 71 years old.
And it so happens it was very wet and we didn't realize it, and the particular rock was covered with moss, which we didn't see. It wasn't there last year. And so when I jumped up on that rock, the bike just disappeared and accelerated me into the ground, and I landed right on my hip. The instant I hit, I knew that I was not going to walk out. So it couldn't have been 5 minutes. We called 911 and got everybody coming after us.
This is a good thing for us because right off the bat, at the 911 dispatch center that receives the call, we get the coordinates of that cell phone. We know the longitude and latitude of where that call is coming from. That helps us when we're going to mount a search and rescue effort. On that particular call, we used 37 people, and 17 of those were first responders. All the remainders were volunteers. Here's where the bike rescue team is very important. They do what they call a hasty search.
We can hit the trails very quickly and search rapidly.
The ham radio operators were able to provide that interface to the command and also to the mountain bike team.
Command, this is Team 1. We are up in the woods. How do you read?
Team 1, this is command. Roger, I'll get you loud and clear.
Hello!
Probably about 20 minutes. We were by his side with a bike rescue person.
Once we found Charlie, as it turns out, both Dave and myself knew Charlie. We've ridden with him before.
And I was a happy camper once I saw them because I knew I was in the right kind of hands.
Because I'm a ham radio operator, I was able to radio for additional assistance. Come to our location, we have found a victim. Glastonbury sent in a gator, and they sent in a second gator with a Stokes basket, and they were also able to bring in the paramedics.
They rode their ATVs as far as they could, and I'm not sure how far that was, but I know they had to do a lot of walking. So they had to pick up all their heavy gear and they had to walk all the way up to me. And they were the next group, and they were the people I really wanted to see because I knew they had some morphine in the packet somewhere, and I needed some.
The ham radio operators traditionally operate a Skywarn system.
And there were storms coming in that day, and we were racing against time. There were very severe storms.
We're looking for any information on potential storm cells coming through the area in the next 15 or 20 minutes. Over.
Hey, I got a report of heavy storm activity from the west heading in your direction.
And they walked me out. It was hot and blazes. They were sweating, and yet they were carrying me like I was some kind of precious cargo. And I said, oh man, I tell you, I got the right guys taking care of me.
And then we needed to load them on a gator.
And we just bounced forever until we got down to Line Street where the ambulance was.
And we were kept in up to the date, up to the minute status of the storm, where it was, how far it was from us, what the winds were, whether there was severe lightning or whatever. So we knew exactly where the storm was and how much time we had. And after the gentleman was rescued, about a half an hour later, the skies opened up.
I'm afraid that if we didn't have our bike rescue team, if we didn't have our ham radio operators, if we did not have our navigators, then I'm afraid that we wouldn't provide as good a service as we do.
The quality of the search and rescue depends on much more than willing volunteers. In fact, you'll find few institutions and disciplines who train quite like emergency first responders. The volunteers say it keeps them engaged and sharp. Often the training starts very young through explorers programs, such as the EMT training in Meriden.
Hi, I'm Sean. Sean, I'm Jim, the paramedic. We're in ambulance number 2 today. Is this your first ride time with us? No? All right, well, this is one of our new ambulances, so let's do a quick check, see what's what.
There's also the Police Explorer program in Fairfield.
They get a hands-on, behind-the-scenes look at exactly what emergency services is all about. And that way, later on in life, they can make an informed career choice. So they're directing traffic, they're manning different tables and booths, providing information to people, and they also assist in any disasters that we have, and they're well-trained to help out, man shelters, things of that nature.
What is not at all unusual in this line of work is to find that these graduates often have emergency services in their DNA.
I have a big interest in law enforcement. I have a lot of cops in the family.
My daughter also got the bug and she joined.
And the minute you got out of high school, that was our goal.
I was 18, my brother was 19, and my cousin Ed was 20. We all joined the same day.
My oldest son, who's been here 14 years, the first time he stepped foot in the firehouse, he was less than a week old.
My son is the 4th generation here.
My family has always volunteered and given back to the community.
My grandfather was a firefighter in Hartford.
Both my grandfather was involved in it, my father currently still involved in it.
My brother was a member here. My dad remained chief until I took over from him.
I have 2 brothers that participate, and I'm very fortunate now I have a nephew who's also involved.
My grandfather was. He started sometime in the early 30s, the same fire department that my brother and my dad and my son are on now.
Emergency first response work is so much a part of the Coles family of Glastonbury that once 4 family members from different emergency systems were all at the same accident scene.
My son, he responded on his bike when he was a kid.
It's a family business, I think. It's just always been something that we were raised with, and my dad and my mom were raised with, and obviously my children have also, had it instilled in them.
While a family affair, these volunteers admit that on more than one occasion, their volunteer activities sometimes took them from the firehouse to the doghouse.
With my wife, I think I was perpetually in the doghouse because it seemed like every time she wanted to do something, I had some fire department function, or I was off at a fire, or I was out with the club or something. And she usually referred to this firehouse with an adjective that wasn't too complimentary, nor should we mention in front of that camera.
I get a complaint once in a while. I put the firehouse first, and I think we all get that. But you know what? You can't schedule your emergencies.
Aidan Mealy and his wife found a solution to the dilemma. They're both members of the Westbrook Volunteer Firehouse.
Instead of just being the older way where it was up, I'm going down to the firehouse for the night. Now we can both go down and share the experiences and the rewards of volunteering.
The troop at the station can become a second family. That's the way it is at the Norwich East Great Plains Volunteer Fire Department. Recently, they needed all the comfort they could get from both home and firehouse families. A tragic fire tested their resolve.
It was a Friday night, early Saturday morning, and my cat was knocking on the back door, and I had been out with my friends, so normally when the cat goes outside, I let him stay outside. So then I heard like a whoosh of wind, so I said, well, I thought it was raining, so I got up, went opened the door, it was nothing but fire.
We never anticipated the heavy amount of fire we had on arrival, and it was very, very challenging. The fire was, the front building was, the whole roof was almost fully involved. And we're getting the ladder set up. Those guys are pulling hose off the truck as the engines are laying supply lines. I mean, the heat was amazing. The light, I mean, it lit up the night sky. As soon as you turn on the street, you could see the glow. And you could smell it as you're driving. As I drove past, you could smell the fire in the air.
The Norwich Peachtree fire was especially difficult for two of the company's newest firefighters. They are both foreign-born and employees of the apartment building, which was going up in flames.
I thought my job is to get here and help to get the people out of here, so I drove stuff here, asked the city chief what he needs for keys, and helped with the police and the city fire department to get the people out of here.
Basically, as soon as I show up, all the tenants, they was right outside here, make sure each tenant, they was here, and I saw all the tenants, and slowly when the fire started to slow down, my boss showed up here too, and we started to count all the people to make sure all the people they was saved in life, and everything it counted really good.
The entire complex of 120 apartment units was destroyed, leaving 160 people homeless. That's when volunteer organizations like the Salvation Army and the Red Cross often step in to help.
So we were there and able to be there for the Red Cross, to be able to do their client casework. We were able to set up 12 laptops. We had cell phones. We had satellite IP phones. We were able to give them communication radios so when they could move about and communicate with each other.
It's tough. I mean, you see people's entire lives, belongings just go right up in front of you despite your best efforts. And you're doing everything you can. It's still, I think it does kind of hit you where you live, because we like to help people as much as can and make things right. And sometimes the cards are stacked against you and it just doesn't happen.
Yes, I lost all my memories. They did the best they, and no one got hurt, no one got injured. They were firemen from New London, they were firemen from Groton, they were firemen from Mystic, and they were all great. Even the police were great. I wanted to thank people because that's all I've been doing since this fire, is thanking people, because I'm here today.
Incidents such as the Peachtree fire tested the system's ability to respond to a major disaster, something officials from the Connecticut Department of Emergency Management and Homeland Security are keenly aware of, as are the communities on the front line.
And most of the times, we cannot prevent a disaster, but we can mitigate a disaster. And we can actually have a more efficient and effective response to a disaster.
When 9/11 occurred, all of us really wanted to give something, either money, blood, or donate time, go help some kind of way. Well, a CERT team is a team that's trained to come to your immediate assistance. What most people do not realize is that the people who are going to help you in a major disaster are not necessarily the first responders. They may be 3 or 4 minutes away. It's going to be the people around you who have the presence of mind to stop and help you survive the disaster.
In Connecticut, and I think throughout the United States in general, citizens have always been willing to step up, help each other, help a neighbor, and I think that's going to be the key for us.
The involvement of more people from neighborhoods is gaining importance as emergency volunteer organizations struggle with their diminishing numbers.
The recruitment and retention issue of the volunteer fire service is nationwide.
Exactly, and I think it's basically everywhere in the volunteer world throughout the country. Is the biggest issue is trying to balance, family, a job, what you like to do besides your firefighting, because as a volunteer firefighter and EMS, We also do that. Takes up a lot of your time, just in training. The days of going over and, breaking windows and putting a hose in the hole until the fire goes out and, are over. Now people have expectations that when you arrive, you know what to do, that you're trained in what you do, and you do a good job at what you do. Now volunteers are also held accountable.
The local gas station operator, a small business operator, just can't leave his business like he used to respond to the call. The other interests of families and wives and children and all the Little League and the soccer moms and all of that stuff are just taking up so much of the time, while all the while the mandates and the training required by the state and federal rules that govern us now demand much more. It takes almost a year, 15 or 18 months to get somebody prepared to become a firefighter.
You know what? The National Fire Protection Association standards, there are OSHA standards, there are insurance industry standards. And all these different organizations don't seem to talk to each other. They say, well, you've got to put in another 40 or 50 hours a year of training or of something. And they don't understand. They're adding that on to everything else that's already there. So I think one of the things that the fire service has to do is to bring all these organizations together and say, time out, you're killing the volunteers. We just can't go on like this. We've got to cut back a little bit.
The strain of regulations, training, and increased family responsibilities just adds to the day-to-day danger of being an emergency first responder.
I've a couple of times been trapped in buildings and have run out of breathing air. I've been in situations where a horrendous explosion could have occurred and I would have been looking at it from ground zero.
Often the dangers go beyond the physical to the psychological effects of dealing with tragedy on a regular basis.
Many, many fatalities and many drownings in the river I've witnessed and been a part of. That's a part of the business that you never really forget, but you have to learn to live with it or you can't do this kind of thing.
From injured children to serious fires, fatalities, we get it all. We've seen it all over the years. These are incidents that tax you to the max.
In an effort to improve the plight of the volunteer, the state has passed a bill protecting the rights of volunteers in the workplace. Some communities are offering small pensions and other incentives, and in the corporate arena, some companies value the contributions of their workers in their communities.
I believe that most of our peers and most of corporate America is very supportive of volunteerism, and in fact there's a trend right now to look at different ways to better organize volunteerism to have real clear impact on the community and to support some of the corporate initiatives that companies are investing in.
Tucked away in the state forest on the Rhode Island border is a small town named after the very tradition of Connecticut volunteerism.
The town itself is peaceful. It's a bedroom community. There's no tax base here. Everybody that works out of town. There's a few small jobs in town.
So quaint is Voluntown that it drew the Gerard family to put down roots.
It's a small enough town. The school system was great.
After moving into town, the Gerards quickly made themselves at home, volunteering in town activities and joining church and civic groups. The Gerards lived right down the street from the volunteer fire department, a social hub of the town. Life was downright peaceful until the afternoon of July 1st.
There was a stove malfunction, and it took out half of our house.
I was like the third one there behind my brother. The flames are already coming through the roof. We donned our Scott air packs, cut holes in the roof, did everything we could to ventilate it, get the heat out so our guys could come up the stairs and put the fire out.
Fire was so hot up there that they said, looking through their mask that they wear, heat shows white, and he says it was completely white, the entire upstairs, and yet they were still up there.
It was a textbook fire, everything went by the book. It was perfect, but the poor family unfortunately lost their home and everything inside it. Luckily, there was no one in the house.
The fortunes of the Gerards were definitely at an all-time low as they struggled to survive. But just when it seemed things couldn't get worse, they did.
My husband came home, he said he was feeling kind of weird, and he thought he'd go swimming with the kids, whoever wanted to go.
I was sitting at home watching the news, and it came over on our pager that there was a possible drowning at Green Falls near the boat launch.
We saw the rescue boat go out, and we all got up at the same time and said, oh, this is not good, and we ran out the house.
Carol Gerard thought the worst, as her husband and 3 of her children were at a remote lake swimming. Her husband was having problems while in deep water, and his 17-year-old son tried to save him. Both would struggle in the depths of Green Falls Pond.
When I arrived, I saw just Lucas, again, out on that little rock island out there. And my first focus was on him, making sure that he stayed there, making sure that he was okay.
I recognized the 11-year-old boy, not because of just the building that we put out, but because I go to church with him on every Sunday. So I knew the family.
So your heart must go out to him. It's like a neighbor.
Pretty much, yeah. But at that point in time, you don't think about that. You have something you have to do, and you do it. I jumped in and swam quite a bit, and then I turned around, and my deputy chief was up on the rocks, and he told me, he says, go another 10 feet. He says, I see a shadow. I finally got a hold of him and got to the surface, and by then, you know, I was struggling to hold this man up. He was a very big man.
I took off my boots and went in the water with him.
We got him to the rocks. CPR was instantly started. I took a 15-second breather and decided I was going to go for the next one, and I found him, brought him to a waiting ambulance.
Our rescue time was so short. I think it was like from the time of the call to the time they were out of the water was like 19 minutes, roughly in that area.
They wouldn't tell us, they just said that there were 2 victims. They wouldn't say who they were. I asked, are they teenagers? You know, I said, my husband's here with my kids, or is it a, you know, older couple? What is it? I went to the ambulance and my 11-year-old was there.
A lot of the calls you go to, you never know who it's going to be. It could be somebody that you've never seen in your life before. It could be your best friend. It could be a relative. It could be your neighbor. You never know. You never know. In a small town like this, you never know who it's going to be. And that kind of wears on you when you're going to the call.
The death of the father and son devastated an already distressed family about to lose their home to bankruptcy. In typical Voluntown style, the same emergency workers who twice risked their own lives to try and save their neighbors, again, have done everything they can to help by holding an immensely successful fundraiser at the firehouse, an act consistent of volunteer firehouses everywhere.
It's unbelievable. It's very overwhelming. Oh yeah, it's amazing. It's almost like everybody here is a family. I'm very humbled by it. I knew the numbers of the tickets they've sold and everything else, but to actually see the amount of people, it's just mind-boggling. It brings tears to your eyes just thinking.
Chicken, get your red hot chicken right here.
We're staying. We wouldn't think of leaving the town, because the amount of support that we're getting here too helps a lot. But this is where, you know, we want to be. We've loved this town since we moved here. And for us to leave now, I mean, my husband and son are buried here, so.
As far as I know, they're trying to regroup. They're going to try to rebuild. They want to remain in this town, and I hope they do.
I still try to figure out what really drives those people.
You know, you're helping your neighbors when they need it the most.
When you save a life, it's great. When you get there and you're able to do something positive, something that really made a difference to people, or you made a great stop on a fire, you saved a tremendous amount of property, you got out of there with a great sense of satisfaction, and that motivates you to go on to the next one.
I'm there to help people, to help them in time of need. They've lost everything most of the time, so I want to give them as much as I can. I can't give them money, I can give them my time.
If we can get there quicker and help somebody, that's absolutely why we do this.
Because if I don't do it, there's not a lot of people out there who are willing to do it. I have the skills and the ability, so and I have some free time, so I can do it.
So yes, I felt it was my duty. I know it may sound corny, but to me it was a duty, and I've enlisted 5 of my colleagues.
When I came to this country, I see that you can do a lot of volunteer stuff, and in my heart, it went out there. I said, I want to do this. I want to support the people, and that's the reason why I do it, because I didn't have a choice to do this to my country. You know, my country said you don't know nobody, you will never be a firefighter, or you will never be a cop. So here you got more opportunity. When I had the opportunity, I would love it to help people. And matter of fact, because there, I fight all the time with my wife, because all the time people call me, I am out there helping my people, you know.
We all pay our taxes, we all do all that stuff, but we go above and beyond. We give back, you know. You look back at 1945, Sherwood's father gave his life because he thought it was the right thing to do.
The opportunity to go in-state or to another state and help people who've had a real bad situation happen actually is really rewarding.
I don't know how to describe it. I have to be more than just a citizen. I don't know how to put that in other words.
And why do you feel that way?
You're born and raised in this country. I'm from another country, and I have to earn my right to be here.
And this is your way of doing that?
Correct.
Anytime you affect someone's life in a positive manner and pull them from harm's way, whatever the situation be, if you're the person that's done it, it's 100% rewarding and then some.
Well, I think initially I was concerned after 911 about how prepared Groton would be and what would happen behind the scenes if Millstone, there was an accident at Millstone. And when I saw an ad for CERT classes, I thought, you know, it's time I stop watching the news and start being prepared as an individual should something happen.
While altruistic, volunteers are often the first to admit that they do it because they love it.
You have all the IT capabilities, the computers. I'm very much into computers and telephones and all the bells and whistles and toys, and it's a lot of fun.
Ham radio is a great hobby, and working with the emergency communications team here gives you a sort of a sense that you're actually contributing to the community, and frankly, it's fun.
There is action. Some people enjoy the action. I'm one of those.
The adrenaline rush, you know, going into a burning building.
The excitement of it all.
The excitement of, you know, being able to help people, the excitement of not knowing what's coming up next.
I like the action, you know. I think all kids like to jump on the red truck and squirt water, if you will, but I really like to help people.
Yeah, it's like our getaway. We got our family at the house, but if it's like, we just come here, relax. We get through like here, we go back home.
I've only been here 3 weeks and everyone's already accepted me. It's like having a family away from the family. I'm technically not even a member yet, and the day I showed up, they all accepted me.
The camaraderie and the social aspect of it are really good.
Made many, many good friends, not only with the other firefighters, but with their families. My family and their families are friends.
Just like a part of the family. I have nobody, no family here.
Some started as volunteer firefighters because they want to further their career and become career firefighters. And this is a way for them to get the bug and see if they really enjoy it.
Making friends, it's learning about law enforcement, learning what to do in given situations, and being around the community that I want to be a part of.
You know, they don't ask to be recognized. They don't ask, you know, to have their names in the newspaper. They just simply do the job.
The firemen, you can't say enough about the firemen. Number one, they worked and they were very helpful to me and my family, and they also looked out for everybody else.
You think of how our regular days unfold and how many times have you had to drop everything to race to an accident scene and put your own safety at risk to save a perfect stranger. And that's what these people do all the time.
It's nice to know that people are amongst us. They could be your neighbors, they could be your co-workers, they're everywhere. It's nice to know they do exist.
How many times have I driven to work or anywhere and seeing emergency service workers doing the kinds of things they have to do, and just thinking, very selfishly, they're in my way, I got to get to work. And here was a day where all of a sudden I needed them. A dozen people needed them desperately. And these people show up. They come out of nowhere, and they show up for you, and they take care of you with all sorts of expertise and sensitivity and kindness. The fact is, I found myself in a horrible situation that day. I needed help, and people showed up for me. And there were a dozen other people in a similar circumstance. And throughout that whole 100 to 200 yards of devastation, people were there helping their fellow man.
I can't praise people enough, and it opened my eyes. Now I have to do something for other people. You know, it woke me up to, you never think that things like this can happen to you. It happened to me. It can happen to you. It can happen to every single one of us.
People in Connecticut are blessed. We have a lot of very talented people. We're asking people to give back a little bit, work with us, help your community, in turn help yourself and others.
You know, you think to yourself, I don't have time. I work, I have to come home, I have to do this, the kids are here, this. But it only takes a moment, and it really is very, very rewarding. No matter what the volunteer organization that you belong to is, then you really can offer something.
If you do, it makes the world that much better, and it shows, especially in a small community.
I think they should absolutely give it a try, go on ride-alongs and see if it's something they would like to do.
Just by taking a CPR class, you get exposed to certain scenes, certain incidents, and hey, I may want to go into nursing. Or you become a junior volunteer firefighter and you go down and participate in whichever way you can and say, I like to try to do this. Stop at your local firehouse, police station, ambulance service, and say, what do you need? How can I help? And knock on the door, and you should be welcome with open arms and a nice handshake.
I think it's extremely important that people actually learn from the stories of people that have sacrificed themselves.
19 years after the fact, a pretty young girl walked into the office over there and she said, you're Mr. Coles, aren't you? I said, yes. And she said, you helped me out of a serious automobile accident on Griswold Street 19 years ago. And according to the doctors in the hospital, you people saved my foot and my leg from being lost forever. And I stood up and she hugged and gave me a kiss, and that's what it's all about, you know.
You know, our EMTs use the defibrillator till we start the victim was in cardiac arrest, and you know, a year later he came into one of our meetings and thanked us. You know, I mean, it doesn't get any better than that.
She survived cardiac arrest, and that's not that unusual. However, about maybe 3 or 4 months later, I received a letter from the family. And the letter was, Dear Pete, thank you very much for having such a wonderful EMS system and for your personal participation. And I'd just like you to know that my mother used to be a cranky old gal, and we had trouble keeping her under control. But now she's in assisted living in South Carolina. Her personality has changed 100% for the better.
The volunteers don't get paid. And they put their lives on the line for all of us, not just me or you, but all of us. And they don't think of us as colors or nationalities. They think of us as people, and they do the best they can to try to help us.
I had an accident, had an operation. I was home 2 days later, and I'm recovering. However, maybe it wouldn't have been that way if I hadn't had all these people touch me on the way. You know, the bike rescue people, the unknown rider who stopped to talk, the 2 teams of EMT people who helped, the ambulance people.
I would love to personally thank every single one of them, but it is, I mean, and I try, but I know I'm not reaching everybody. But yeah, my entire family, we're just so set back by all this, and it's the most awesome thing that we've ever seen or heard. And we just need to say thank you to everybody.
I feel it's a privilege for me to come here and thank them myself. Thank you. Giuseppe is a very nice man, and he's a very nice person, and I want to thank you guys for what you did for me and my family and all of us. Thank you very much. And I mean it too. Thank you. Don't make me cry. I want to look at the camera now. I want to start crying. So thanks again.
I just don't have enough gratitude to express towards those people. They're wonderful people. I am very, very grateful that they are amongst us and they come when you needed them the most. Thank you, Todd Myers, very much that you were there at the right time, at the right place with me, and you saved my life. I will never, ever forget it. Thank you.
In terms of...
I'm getting quite emotional now,
okay.
Excuse me.
I can understand that feeling. I mean, now you're living your life. Everything that happens from now on is because of his action.
Exactly. My life would have ended 3 years ago, and I would never be able to enjoy, the recent events that occurred in my life. And it's so wonderful. It's the greatest gift he could ever give me.
Local Lens is a CPTV documentary series made possible by funding from the Connecticut Commission on Culture and Tourism. Funding for this episode, On Watch, Connecticut's Emergency Service Volunteers, is provided by our partners, the State of Connecticut Department of Emergency Management and Homeland Security, Citizen Corps, the Commission on Fire Prevention and Control, the Connecticut Department of Public Health, and the Public Health Foundation of Connecticut. Additional support comes from the Torrington Medical Reserve Corps, MyTV9, and these sponsors. The preceding program was a Boris Productions presentation.